Chapter 3. That man was a man about 36 or 37 years old. His hair and nails were neatly manicured, his clothes fit well, his shirt was pressed neatly, and his house was kept spotlessly clean. Sitting beside him was the psychiatrist described by ᎢℋᎪNN. "Please take a seat." The man said to Lu Yi and ᎢℋᎪNN, "Please have some tea. Oh, I forgot to introduce, this is Dr. Wang." When the man spoke, he had the right smile on his face, neither warm nor cold, as if he had calculated it precisely. Lu Yi glanced at his entire room and found that there were almost no decorative things in the room. The floor was regular and tightly stitched black and white floor tiles, a square table, a square sofa, a square coffee table, and the coffee table was covered with a checkered tablecloth. Even the watch and the wall clock are square. The tables and chairs seem to be customized, fixed on the ground and cannot move. The 4 feet are neatly stitched with the floor. The tea coasters on the table are basically square, which is precisely sewn with the pattern of the tablecloth, and there are traces of trimming around it. In this way, several people with round heads in the room were particularly eye-catching. Lu Yi couldn't help thinking, why do human beings grow such an irregular head? "No thank you." ᎢℋᎪNN refused the tea. "Let's ask a few words and leave." "We'll sit down, sir. Your surname is Chin, right?" "Qinzhao." The man answered lightly, but his eyes fell on Lu Yi, who was watching his cup mat with interest. Qinzhao said, "I'm a freelancer living by inheritance. I don't think this gentleman is a policeman, right?" Lu Yi put the coaster back on the table, very carefully sticking to the edge of the tablecloth pattern. "Teacher." "Qinzhao, oh, I didn't ask you about your major." Lu Yi stared at him and lost his mind for a moment. Before ᎢℋᎪNN reminded him, he successfully regained his soul and said erratically, "Experimental psychology." Rumors said that the reason why such a naughty teacher like Mr. Lu is not overwhelmed by the students' negative comments at the end of each year, is because his exams are open books, ignoring the failure rate and never failing people. Qinzhao suddenly showed great interest and leaned forward. "Oh? Which school are you from? I am also very interested in this, and I have studied many professional literature, especially Hua." "You don't need to care about me," Lu Yi interrupted him. "Captain Li wants to ask you something, just answer his question." Qinzhao paused, looked down at the coaster placed by Lu Yi, and nodded gracefully. "Oh, sorry, I'm a little excited. I haven't taken the medicine today. I occasionally do this before taking the medicine. I would like to ask you to describe what happened this afternoon." ᎢℋᎪNN coughed dryly, trying to catch Qinzhao's eyes. "Can you be more specific? I hope to see if there is anything missing." For some reason, Qinzhao showed extraordinary interest in Lu Yi. He was like a child attracted by the beautiful toys in the window, and directly ignoring ᎢℋᎪNN. It wasn't until ᎢℋᎪNN called him for the second time, and Dr. Wang gently pulled him next to him, that Qinzhao reluctantly teared his eyes from Lu Yi, and politely made a look of listening attentively. "Excuse me." ᎢℋᎪNN had to repeat, "I want to ask you to describe what happened this afternoon." "Oh," Qinzhao thought for a while, and then his eyes fell on his watch. "Okay, I'll do it in chronological order, which will be clearer." ᎢℋᎪNN took out his notebook. "Please. At 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 3 seconds this afternoon, Dr. Wang entered my box. I prepared tea and snacks to entertain him." He took out a palm-sized notebook from his wrinkled coat pocket, took out a pen from his shirt pocket, and his anxious eyes showed extraordinary concentration. "Lu Yi, do you mean your yard by box?" Dr. Wang explained next to him. "The patient has mild delusional symptoms, and he is fascinated by a thought experiment once proposed in the scientific community. He thinks that everyone is a brain in a box, and human beings do not exist." "Excuse me," Qinzhao said, "I must declare that I am not a paranoid patient. I asked Dr. Wang to treat my insomnia and neurasthenia." My so-called box is a metaphor. Each of us is indeed the brain that has been put in the box. As long as the corresponding part of the brain is stimulated, it can make you feel as if you are in the real world, and your mind is a written program. Have you read Matrix? The movie is real, but unfortunately no one believes that people are unwilling to give up life in an illusory world and treat logically rigorous scientific speculation as a fantasy. Seeing that he was babbling on his own as if he had been flipped on a switch, Dr. Wang sighed, turned his head and said to Lu Yi, "You see." Lu Yi asked, "What other symptoms are there?" Delusion of being persecuted. Dr. Wang shrugged. He thought someone was watching him because he knew the secrets of the world, so he forced himself to live according to an absolutely regular schedule every day, thinking that stylization would defeat the enemy doubt about him. You see. Dr. Wang pointed to the wall and saw a timetable posted there. Everything from getting up, eating, taking out the trash to watching TV was arranged. Dr. Wang gave a wry smile. Next, he will be taking medicine and taking out the garbage soon. Seeing that Qin Zhao was halfway through speaking, he suddenly stopped without warning, stood up and walked towards the kitchen. "Dr. Wang, let him take the medicine. You should ask me, I was there the whole time." "Li Yonghao, you two have never left the house." "Dr. Wang, I have been trying to communicate with him, but his logic is deep-rooted and communication is very difficult. The lady from the neighbor came to look for the child at about 4 o'clock, and I was about to leave at that time. After that, we accompanied her and asked around. We couldn't find anyone, and we was worried that the child might have been lost, so I suggested that she call the police." As he said before, Li Yonghao began to check some details again, but Lu Yi was impatient to listen to it any longer, and began to circle around Qin Zhao's room until he walked to Qin Zhao's balcony. There is nothing superfluous on the balcony, only a small table that is not high, very clean, and there is a bird cage hanging next to it. Yes, I don't know if it was because of the owner's poor care. Lu Yi bent down, reached out and teased the bird. The parrot seemed to be greatly frightened and fluttered hard. Lu Yi didn't expect this bird to be so neurotic, and withdrew his fingers rather boringly. Just as he was about to take a closer look at the balcony, suddenly, a hand was placed on his shoulder. As soon as Lu Yi turned around, he saw Qin Zhao standing upright behind him, and said with a frown, "I still want to discuss your major with you. Don't you think the conditional itself is proof of my idea?" Lu Yi looked at him blankly for a moment. "I don't think so at all." Qin Zhao ignored it, making Lu Yi, who had ignored others countless times, experience the feeling of being ignored for the first time. Actually, conditioned reflex itself is a program. Really, the inner world of people is a series of action flows. Seeing through this, you can see through all the processes of a brain. Preface. For example, Mr. Zhao, my neighbor, often goes on business trips. If I get up early in the morning, he will put his suitcase into the car and say hello to me. I know his secret from his movement flow. Lu Yi hadn't said anything yet, but Li Yonghao's ears that were always open to gossip rose up sensitively. What secret? If he does go on a business trip, the company will send a car to pick him up to the airport. Because the return period is uncertain, the airport parking fee is very high, or he is worried that the return date is uncertain. The license plate happens to be limited on the return journey, so I know that every time he drives his own car with his suitcase, he is a fake business trip. Qin Zhao smiled mysteriously. I found that he was very frequent of fake business trips, on average once a week, especially after quarreling with his wife. The word later didn't come out. Qin Zhao's eyes suddenly fell on the big clock in the room, and then he closed his mouth again without warning, like a activated robot, ignoring everyone else, and walked to the back door of the house. Pushed a large trash can with rollers, and walked out. Dr. Wang spread his hands. Hey, it's time for him to take out the trash. He must take out the trash at a designated location. This can only take the time to the outside of the community, and it takes a long circle to come back. Do you two have any questions? When he comes back, he will go to the next task. Take a bath. I think it's late today, I'm afraid. End of chapter 3.